fact that you are a fan of the show as well. And thank you, SDev08, for the $4.99. In your opinion, do you think labels like progressive have come to mean the same thing as liberal at this point? Yeah, I mean, we're almost at that point for sure. We're almost at that point. I don't think that progressive quite has the same connotations as liberal does. But yeah, I mean, we're almost there. We're almost there. And I remember back in like the kind of like the Bush era when the word liberal, the term liberal, if you referred to yourself as a liberal, at least this is how I remember it, you were kind of saying like, I'm a radical leftist almost, like, oh yeah, I'm a hardcore liberal. And now, of course, it kind of just means more of like a milquetoast Democrat, right? And I see the same thing happening with progressive. Back in 2015, progressive was kind of like the edgy lefty term, like I'm a progressive, like fight me. You know, now progressive, as you said, Zach, is kind of being more associated with people like Pete Buttigieg and people like Kamala Harris that lean really hardcore into identity politics over substantive policy. So yeah, I definitely see that happening.
Yeah, to me, the only distinction that I would give is that I feel like at this point, as it stands, and I think that this is changing, right, to just become more synonymous with anybody, is that like liberal, I think, is still holding on a little bit more to Obama era politics, right? I think that if you're somebody who in this day and age identifies as a liberal still, usually what you're telling me is that you don't believe in universal programs. That's what I pick up as a leftist. If you tell me, oh, I'm a classical liberal, that means that you're probably okay with cutting welfare checks and talking to me about how, like, well, there's actually a lot of people abusing the system and we don't actually need more, we don't need to.
Well, it's ironic because the term liberal, if you really think about it, it means like I'm in favor of liberal spending. Like I'm in favor of being liberal with government spending as opposed to conservative. So it's unfortunate that it's become twisted to that extent, because if you think about it, technically it means the exact opposite of that.
I don't know if that's 100% true. I just Googled the definition, and it says a supporter of a political and social philosophy that promotes individual rights, civil liberties, democracy, and free enterprise. So I do think that it still has those like capitalist connotations in there. And that would just be my one distinction.
Well, true, but I mean, our social safety net is set up under a capitalist system right now. So you could be in favor of both expanding the social safety net and be in favor of capitalism, because much of the social safety net exists in a capitalist infrastructure right now. But all I'm saying is that traditionally liberals have been known to be the, people that are more in favor of being, again, liberal with spending versus conservatives that are more conservative with spending. But that's also, lost in today's day and age. Words have the meaning of words and terms like that change a lot, and of course there's many definitions.
Yeah, and there's the most hysterical definition of that actually is the term libertarian, which I learned from Noam Chomsky actually when I got first really into listening to Noam Chomsky lectures. He loves to point out the term that in like Europe, if you say libertarian, it automatically implies that you're like a Peter Kropotkin, like a fucking anarcho-socialist. Like obviously you believe in a welfare state, because it's senseless not to believe in a welfare state if you're European. Like that's just like breathing. Of course you pay your fucking taxes and whatever. But if you're in America, we have a directly directly reverse worldview. So in America, if you identify as libertarian, that means that you're associated with like rabid anarcho-capitalism, which I always thought was a very interesting phenomenon. And he talks about, as a linguist, how this is no accident, right? But by the social conditionings and the media and the way that we talk about everything and teach people through language and all those types of deals, it becomes a method of social control. So it would make complete sense for over time these terms like liberal or progressive or whatever the fucking term is, to be diluted over time to better suit the narrative of, the establishment, in the same way that like being a centrist right now is not exactly what the same was being a centrist in the 1950s was. The needle's been moved, I would argue, dramatically to the right in a lot of capacities, and in some social capacities, a little bit to what I would call the authentic center, which would be like respecting people's human rights and dignity.
Right. And even a lot of the, radical leftist socialist ideas have majority support when it comes to polling. So technically those would be centrist if you really cared. But most people, just use words however they want. And centrist just means corporate right wing, essentially, instead of actually representative of where the populace is at. But anyway, I guess we can move on to another fun story. This is one that's been trending on Twitter